I just want to clarify two things in that introduction video.
Yes.
You might welcome this opportunity to clarify.
Sure.
Let's start with the first statement. At the halfway mark of the first term of the president.
Sorry, I misspoke. It is the first half of the president's term.
Okay.
I think I did see you. I know. Realizing mid-sentence what you just said. But the second thing, I think it was interesting what you said. That, and it's good that the producers did take the initiative to point this out. You pointed out that nobody who supported tax reform lost. And we remember the many guests that we had heading into the elections. There was a lot of talk about the recto syndrome. And there was a lot of talk about, supportahan mo yan. Nako, yari ka, delikado ka. But what do you think, what is different in what transpired with Train? What is different with what happened when it comes to tax reform?
Well, in the first place, I think that the Filipino people support the tax reform for a number of reasons. Number one, it is a fair measure. In other words, the richer people paid the higher tax, and the poorer people got a tax break. In fact, in the Train 1, 99% of all wage earners got a tax break. The equivalent is about a 14-month pay. And the increase in taxes on fuel were very moderate. And actually, fuel taxes hits the richest 10% of the country because it's they that have the cars. So I think it was fair. Secondly, I think the people see that the money is being spent for their benefit. The Build, Build, Build program creates roads, bridges. We've spent also on human capital development, free education, and now we have a universal health care. And number three, I think they see that the money is not stolen, that whatever is spent goes into the project 100%. So I think for those three reasons, the Filipino people support tax reform, and they did not punish, by not voting for them, they did not punish those legislators who supported the tax reform. Number one there is Sani Angara. I mean, he was the Ways and Means Committee, and, he came out number 5. Totally different from the experience of Ralph Recto in the mid-2000s when he supported an increase in the VAT.
But people have said as well that the impact of excise taxes, for example, the impact of taxes on the lower 30% of the population was different, and people experience it in different ways. And in any case, it is counterintuitive. People are bracing themselves for higher prices, higher taxes, higher cost of living, and so on, higher commodities. Is there a risk in the next tranches that the experience will be different? I mean,
when we decided to do the tax reform, we decided to split up the measures, and we decided to do the most difficult ones first. And that's why we got the Train 1 going, because that affected prices of fuel, and that affected also the reduction in taxation for the wage earners. The next measures are not going to be as difficult because they are measures that are meant to modernize our tax system rather than raise revenues. So number one is we want to modernize our revenues from corporate income tax. We want to lower corporate income tax. On the other hand, we also want to modernize our incentive system. Our incentive system is outdated. It is not transparent. It is not targeted. It is not time-bound. And we think that we have to modernize our system. The next measure we are planning to do is simplify the tax measures for capital income. You know, our capital income tax measures is very anti-poor. If you have a deposit of pesos in a savings account, the withholding tax there is 20% if it is less than 5 years. If you have it over 5 years, there's no tax. Now, who can hold the deposits over 5 years? It's not the ordinary wage earners. So we want to make sure that we lower the withholding tax for the savings, but tax everything the same. We have a very complex system for other capital income taxes. We have 82 taxes applied to capital income. We want to bring it down to 40. You know, 40 is still too high, but I guess that's about where we can go. So that should be very popular. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to go back to the incentives because this is one of the more contentious issues in the tax reform package. No? The business groups are complaining that it might drive away investors, especially from the export processing zones, drive away jobs, and they say compared with the rest of Southeast Asia, I don't know if this is true, that it will make us less competitive. Is this true?
We have the most generous tax incentives already. In fact, our tax incentives are forever. Other countries, you have them for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But ours are forever. We have companies that have been enjoying tax incentives for 40 years. And as far as I'm concerned, that's not tax incentives. That's corporate welfare, okay? And another point I'd like to make is, you know, I talked to some businessmen and I said, look, I have a program where I will provide you 20 years no tax at all, local or national taxes. I will even subsidize each worker you hire. I'll give you 100,000 pesos. But you put it in Marawi. And then they say, oh no, we cannot do that. So what is the importance of tax incentives? It is more important to have peace and order, good infrastructure, good telecommunications. It's more those are more important. A very good workforce. That's more important than giving them a tax incentive. So let's realize what tax incentives are.
Just to throw this in, I want to ask a question about inflation. We have tempered it, but a lot of people are saying, look, that's baseline effect. We were coming from record highs before, so talagang magsa-slow down yan. And in the meantime, you compare it to our neighbors, everybody's inflation rate is much, much lower still than ours. What's going on there?
If you look at what happened in 2018, the biggest factor that came up were two. Okay, number one was the big jump in price of fuel. Everybody got hit by that. Now, number two, the agriculture sector did not perform well at all. It barely grew. So that means to say you had shortages, and we identified the shortages very early on and took measures to bring up the supply of particularly of rice. And we were able to start bringing down the inflation rate after September of last year. And actually, we were just looking at the statistics. We have brought down the inflation rate the fastest ever, because the inflation rate jumped up during Noy Noy's time, also because of rice shortages, and it took them about 14 months. It took us about 10 or 11 months to bring it down. So we identified it very, very fast.
Okay.
And of course, you can say it's baseline effects, but the fact of the matter is the prices are not rising. In fact, the prices of our basic commodities are falling.
Sir, there was no political fallout, as we saw, from your tax reform package. But our targets are not on track this year. The first 5 months, growth has slowed down, and I think there's some political element there. What are we going to do about it to catch up? We have only about 6 months left.
Yeah, seven months.
7.
Actually, what happened was because we had to operate on a reenacted budget until May, we were not able to spend around 1 billion pesos a day.
Wow.
So
A day?
A day. So that meant to say we were not spending for additional roads, we were not spending for better education, better health care. So now we met right after the budget was finally in effect. And we met with the 2 primary infrastructure agencies. And we set very hard targets for them to meet. But we all know that all those targets, especially for the infrastructure projects, are subject to weather conditions.
Yeah.
And we're working very hard. So far, the weather has been mild, thank heavens. And so far, we are now catching up. The first full month was June, and up to July, our expenditures have actually ratcheted up.
Yeah.
But there's a warning about one of the worst monsoon seasons, plus there's a continuing trade war between the U.S. and China, which might be affecting us.
Well, you know, the monsoon, well, you know, I really don't know.
It's the
But
weather.
I certainly hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I hope it's a mild monsoon weather.
Yeah.
With regards to the trade war, yes, we are affected by it, but since we are not a large trading nation, we're not that much affected. Although I must say, you know, a lot of our exports going to China are repackaged and are actually put in products that eventually get to the U.S. So that is beginning to be hit. However, I just read today that, you know, a country like Singapore, which is a very large trading nation, their GDP has dropped a little over 3%, negative. So that shows that we are experiencing headwinds. But I think these headwinds will not affect us as badly as more heavily traded nations.
But is there any way we can take advantage of this trade war?
Yes.
Considering that we're not mainly a trading economy, we're a service economy.
Yes. Yes, in fact, we are getting a lot of inquiries and
But as you pointed out, my main job is raising the funds. So let's talk about raising funds.
Yes.
How is the Bureau of Customs doing?
actually, from the point of view of meeting and exceeding their targets, very well. They have a target this year of close to 60 billion pesos a month, and they have been meeting it. And I would say they've done a good job from that point of view.
How about from the point of view of corruption?
On the point of view of corruption, I believe that there is much to be improved, okay? Particularly in the Bureau of Customs.
Yeah.
That's why...
Is there a number to that? Is there a number to the leakage, as it were?
Jeez, no, I would be totally guessing. But let me just put it this way. The department is working very closely together with Customs on two major projects. Number one, automating the processes to eliminate people contact, face-to-face contact. Okay, we are well on our way to getting that done, and we also want to do this automation as also to help trade going on. Okay? And we are working together with the ASEAN on these things. The next thing we're trying to do is we're trying to introduce measures such as fuel marking, so we can identify which fuel who hasn't paid their tax, and we're going to implement that in the next quarter, the next coming quarter already. It's a difficult process, mainly because we have so many ports. You know, it's not like all the fuel is coming in one port. So we have to devise different ways of injecting the fuel marker in the different ports. So that's coming along, and we've already published the IRR and ready to implement it in the next quarter.
In terms of automation, I remember from the time of FVR, Fidel Ramos, they've been trying to do this. Balong Arevalo did it.
Yes, yes.
And I think at one point, people started painting sardine sauce on the computer lines para kainin ng daga, para kainin ng daga yung ano, and just to sabotage everything. What are we going to do to deal with these problems?
The Wi-Fi now.
Use Wi-Fi.
That's why
Okay.
technology is helping
Fine.
us.
Hindi mo na kailangan
No,
lang
no,
cable.
technology is really helping us.
Yeah.
Right now in customs, we have a situation room where we can see where all the cargo coming in all the ports and how they are being processed.
But the X-ray na-sabotage before.
Yes,
Oh,
that's
so,
no, in fact, they used to tell me, sa X-ray, isa lang daw picture.
Yun na nga, yun na nga.
kahit na ano.
Yun na nga.
Yeah, so we're using technology now.
Okay. Better technology.
Improved technology.
Improved technology.
To get around.
Kanina
Okay.
we were discussing this. I just wanted to share this with you. I mean, of the end-to-end process, because you said, automation hopefully minimizes
Yes.
the human factor. What percentage of the process right now to get something out of customs involves human intervention?
Too much. Probably up to 80% yet.
And you think you can bring it down to
Maybe 40%.
Because you see a lot of LGUs
Yes.
now. Valenzuela, I've been to
Yes.
the Valenzuela City Hall, really impressive, and they've shown. I mean, not only have they reduced the human intervention,
Yes.
revenues have
Yes,
gone up.
correct, yeah. If you put your mind to it, it can be done. Okay.
Okay.
So this is our major work. The Department of Finance is working together with the customs.
Okay.
Okay, since you talked about bills, you think you can work better with any particular person leading the House of Representatives?
Oh no,
I mean,
me. As I told the president, I will work with anybody as long as I can until I can no longer work with them. Okay.
Of course, I asked this because
your
you were,
name
yes.
has come up,
Yeah.
supposedly backing Alan Peter Cayetano along with Mark Villar, DPWH Secretary. Is there any truth to that?
Absolutely not. In fact, Lito Atienza is an old friend of mine, and I was really saying, wow, Lito must be losing it. because actually, and this is the honest truth, okay? When I was asked my opinion by the president, I told him, number one, I will not tell you any names, okay? I will just tell you, number one, what should be the criterion if you have a preference. The criterion should be one only, that it will serve your program, that the persons there are going to serve your program, whether in the cabinet or in legislature. That is one criteria. The second thing is, I said, I will tell you not what I want. I will tell you what we need from the cabinet's point of view. We need a team in the legislature that will be open to adopting our program, and that we do not have to negotiate every little deal that goes through them. So it has to be an overall understanding that this is good for the country and that together we work to get the legislation.
But sir, doesn't that apply to all the three candidates? They've all been insistent that they are
They
the
are
ones
the
who
most
really
cooperative.
support the president, and they will push his agenda.
Well, that is what they say.
Okay, when you gave that recommendation, did the president turn to you and say, "So who do you want?"
Yes,
He asked you who you suggest.
yes.
And
And I said I will not name anybody.
okay,
I have a
that's
question
very
on the
direct.
modality, because
Yeah.
a lot
Okay.
of the congressmen that we guested over the past 2 weeks said that term sharing is counterproductive. You have 15 months, you have 15, 21, whatever the permutation is. It's counterproductive. He said, midstream we're going to have to change horses. Do you think that's a fair concern?
Actually, if everybody has the same goal, it is not. it is not a concern. But everybody has to be in the same team. It's just like in the cabinet, okay? We have to work together to a common goal.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
that
we
was
believe
quick.
you.